All right, Congresswoman, let me start with you. I'm assuming you don't agree with everything that I just said, so tell me what you think I'm getting wrong here.
Yeah, no, I think that it's very evident. I think the American people feel this way as much so to the point of we actually brought forward inherent contempt, a resolution to actually hold Garland, because what we're finding right now is there is a double standard that exists in the justice system. And what you're seeing with Hunter Biden is, look, I'd like to keep it focused on really where the links are between Hunter Biden and his father. And it seemed like every step of the way we were blockaded in our investigations. But I don't think that necessarily this trial is over just because he's been convicted. I do think, and I hold that sentiment, that I think right before the election results are in, I think that it's very possible that Joe Biden will pardon his son. And I say that because recently Kevin Kiley, a member of Congress, actually had reported that Kamala Harris was eyeballing a governor's race in California. And so I think that the writing's on the wall that they think that they are going to be losing this election. So it doesn't mean that necessarily this is over. And I think that it's possible that he'll pardon his son.
I think it's possible, too. I do, even though he said that he wouldn't. But when you talk about, again, this weaponization, you didn't use that word, but that is the word that has been used, the weaponization of the Department of Justice. I can never get over the fact, when I look at the list, right, of the high-profile Democrats who've been prosecuted by this Department of Justice, Hunter Biden, Senator Bob Menendez, Representative Henry Cuellar has now been charged, a key Democrat out of Texas. Representative Cori Bush is under investigation. Mayor Eric Adams under investigation. Marilyn Mosby, the former Baltimore top prosecutor there, was just convicted. She says it was political on the other side. Former Representative T.J. Cox, a Democrat from California. Karen Carter Peterson, former head of the Louisiana Democratic Party. Andrew Gillum, former Tallahassee mayor and Florida gubernatorial candidate. I mean, these are all people, Democrats, who've been prosecuted by this DOJ. It just seems like it's a tough argument to say that DOJ is weaponized against Republicans.
I think the reason why a lot of Republicans, and I think just in general Americans, hold that sentiment is when you're looking at the evidence that we uncovered, for example, what happened with this administration really involving themselves and really putting top-down pressure on the IRS not to investigate Hunter's business dealings. There's a number of circumstances that have occurred where the DOJ has seemed to go soft on the perspective of the Bidens. But, I mean, I would hope that the Department of Justice would hold all those people accountable. But I can tell you right now that it seems like if I were just an average American doing those things that any one of those numbers of representatives are under investigation for currently, I think that I'd probably be in jail. And the fact that they are not, it just seems like there's a double standard, not just that it exists for Democrats, but I think for members of Congress as well. And so, again, going back to what we're trying to do with inherent contempt, that hasn't been done since the early 1900s, and it's really unfortunate that it's come down to that. But I do think that when you have people that are ignoring subpoenas, when you have people that are supposed to be in positions of accountability and power, and they're basically exploiting that they also need to be held accountable.
But it sounds like what you're saying is all these Democrats are probably guilty, but any of the Republicans who may be under suspicion aren't, and therefore that shows you that the DOJ is weaponized. No?
No. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I was the first person to even, let's take Representative Santos, for example. You know, I don't agree with what my colleagues did in really kicking him out of Congress before he was convicted. But if he had been convicted, I would have voted for expulsion. And what I will say is that we cannot allow there to be a double standard. And what you are seeing right now, in fact, I'd like to bring up President Trump's trial, what's happening right now in New York City. It's very evident that that was not something that was done justly. And I think the American people hold that sentiment. And it's scary because what you're finding is that people that are worried about the economy, people that are focusing about what's happening with their families, they're being really shown their sideshow. And what it's showing is legislators here are more concerned about getting even and really, I think, hemming up their political opponents in the justice system than actually working on behalf of the American people. And that's why I'm looking forward to President Trump's reelection in November.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been critical of the Manhattan case as well. But Joe Walsh, you've been listening and shaking your heads. What do you make of this?
Dan, I love you, brother, and this isn't complicated. Everything the Congresswoman just said there, and that amazing montage you played earlier of everyone in right-wing media, convinced, right, that there's some huge conspiracy here. It's not complicated. Here's the deal. The Congresswoman's leader of her party, the nominee, denies that Joe Biden won in 2020. So damn near every Republican has to say...
Hillary Clinton denied that she lost in 2016. So
I promise I'll let you respond.
Call it what it is?
I promise I'll let you respond.
You can,
Yep.
Congresswoman, you can fire right back at me. So Dan, that's part of it. So now every Republican sows distrust in our election system. They're doing the same thing here with the justice system. The leader of their party's been indicted 4 times, 88 felony counts. They have to scream that the justice system is unfair, even when, as you presented, the Justice Department's gone after Democrats too. They have to defend Trump, so they have to say this.
All right, Congresswoman, I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. Let me just point out, you said something on election integrity. You know, in the state of Florida, we actually opened up a division of election integrity. We found out that people were indeed trying to do things in our past election cycle. They were arrested for that. So to say that our election system is 100% reliable and to really encourage people not to have oversight on that, I think is irresponsible. But even then, so and aside from that, if you're trying to say what happened in New York, where they took a misdemeanor that was outside of the statute of limitation and upgraded it to a felony only to go after the president, and he's been charged over, what, 90-something times?
Well, but
I mean, look, you don't have to like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But what I will say is he's done some incredible things for this country, and it is weaponized against him.
The cases can be viewed individually, though. You can separate. I separate them out, right? I look at the evidence in each case. I talk about which case should be prosecuted, maybe which one shouldn't. But go ahead, Joe, final word on this.
Final word is what Joe Biden said today. This is what a president who puts the country first says. I accept the verdict and I respect the process. Those are words, Dan, that Donald Trump is incapable of ever uttering.
Congresswoman Paulina Luna, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the program. Joe Walsh, appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.